Survivor's ready. Go!
Trump spoken.
Boston Rob and Amber are gonna do it.
This is a business trip, as I like to say.
You, Brad Culpepper.
I'm tired of you and the fucking chicken.
You can call me the puppet master. They can be my little puppets.
It's not like you're making me deal with the devil here.
You get to milk your own milk, I guess.
Who the hell voted for me?
Chicken.
We got enough rocks here, too. We could build a pretty decent shelter just using rocks.
I'm supposed to talk Lime, or you? You understand that better?
Direct from Hobart, it's time for the only Survivor podcast in Australia dedicated to Survivor, bringing you all the latest interviews, episodes, and opinions from the greatest reality show on the planet. It's Survivor Oz, and here's your host, Ben Waterworth.
Hello everybody, welcome back to Survivor Oz, Australia's #1 film TV podcast. Again, guest hosted by a Canadian this week, ruining Australia for everybody. I'm Colin Hilding, again filling in for Ben Waterworth, who's away this week. And we're joined for another recap here for season 31. I almost lost track of what season we're at here. I should be losing track of the episode, but season 31 and episode 4, titled What's the Beef? And as usual, we're joined by past contestants to cover everything that went on this week on the episode. And we're very happy this week to not only have on a contestant from the show in the past, but a contestant from the most recent season. And I believe, unless I'm wrong, for the first time this season, somebody who was actually in the running and was this close to actually being out there on this episode this week. We're so happy to be joined this week by Carolyn Rivera.
Thank you. Thank you.
And you, of course, were Worlds Apart. We can call you runner-up Worlds Apart, right?
Yes, you can.
Proper runner-up from Worlds Apart. Should have been winner from Worlds Apart, in my opinion, but
oh, you?
There'll still be second chances too, I guess, so that's still to come.
Exactly.
Just as we get going here, before we get into this week's episode, how are you finding the season so far, based on the first few episodes you've seen?
Actually, I think it is really turning out to be a very, very good season, which honestly I knew it would be because you actually have a lot of gamers out there. Everyone's played the game. Even though people have played a long time ago, their spirit about getting back on the show was never lost, and so that's why I was really, pretty sure that we were going to be very pleased with this season. So, yeah, I don't think it's been disappointing at all.
I have to figure that it would be a little bit different for you. I mean, I was talking to Billy Garcia last week, and he was saying, we were talking about how his perspective changed on the show, once he'd been on it. And this is kind of your first season to be able to view it as a real player, somebody who had been in the game. And that has to change your perspective on the season for one thing. But then you add on top of that the fact that you were in the riding for this season. Do you find that you have a different perspective on this season, or that maybe you have a little bit more of an invested interest, or maybe less of an invested interest because of how close you were to being out there?
Well, honestly, it is kind of interesting after being on the show when you begin to see the season unfold, and you look at the show a lot differently because when they first step on the mats and when they first go to their first challenge, in my mind I'm kind of reminiscing to myself like, oh wow, I remember when, and you kind of relive those feelings all over again, and the excitement kind of builds, what they're going through. You see kind of, when the breakdowns happen, you can feel what they're feeling. So, no, I was pretty upset the day that I didn't get selected. That was the finale day, not my best and favorite day.
Yeah.
When, only getting one vote and not getting on second chance. It wasn't the day that I'll say, wow, that was the best day of my life. But, honestly, I just enjoy the show. I love the concept, and it just, I just can never stop talking about, what a fabulous experience it was. So, I just enjoy every season as I always have. I just see it a little differently now.
It's good to be able to just get over everything right away, because I know there's some players out there who you can already tell are just bitter they weren't on the season and they're just taking shots at it. Some just don't want to watch it all. You can actually still remain a fan, I guess. And does it come from being a big fan before the show aired or before you were on the show, do you think?
I do. I have been watching the show literally since season 1, and my family will tell you, and anybody, I have talked about being on this show from the beginning. And I didn't start applying until my children were old enough to be, in college, out of the house. And I felt like then it was, my time. So I think just because I've been such a fan of the show, and honestly, I had a fabulous experience out there. It was one of the best things that I've ever done in my entire life. So yeah, I'm not bitter. I mean, it wasn't meant to be. I always think to myself, things happen for a reason, and I wasn't selected for Cambodia for a specific reason. So, hopefully my turn will come, at a later time.
Yeah. And of course, there's a lot of players on this season that, had been, Varner alone, I don't know how many times he was in the mix. I believe it was even with South Pacific. He was flown out there and didn't even realize he was the alternate, but he thought he had been cast on the season. So there's a lot of these players who have kind of been waiting to get that second chance for a long time. You coming off of your season, obviously you probably didn't have as many interactions with these people, but were you able to get to know any of these contestants outside of the ones obviously from your season before the season started for second chances?
Honestly, I did not. I didn't have a big opportunity to really meet anyone or talk to anyone. So it wasn't like, I felt like, wow, I'm there. And that I had built, some level of connection with people, because I didn't really have a lot of time. I was so engrossed in my season, still airing, and not really getting over the fact that I didn't even know it was going to be aired next episode next week. So, I was kind of just focusing in on, my season, and didn't really look to the future too much.
Again, before we get into this episode, you do bring an interesting perspective because you were almost on this season. Do you feel that the fact that you were still in the mix leading right up to the finale is, one of the things that made it more difficult for you to get the votes to go out there? Because that was the one thing we were worried about as the votes for the season were happening. We're like, it's almost, in a way, it's an advantage for the Worlds Apart people going in that you have this chance to have the most exposure, but at the same time, because people don't know, is this vote going to be, like, look what happened with Mike, people voted for him, but of course he's not really eligible, that maybe that was one of the things that we worried, this might be harder for somebody like Carolyn to get votes to go on the show.
Honestly, I do think that a lot of people thought that I could win this season. I think that people thought that it could have gone either way. Again, the last episode was a double episode, so nobody was able to really see. I think the idol play was that episode, that same finale night, right? No, the week before. Mm-hmm. So it was the whole final 5. It was the loved one visit. They didn't know who was still going to be there. So, and the votes stopped before the last episode was complete. So I think, people probably might have thought that Mike was going to eventually lose a challenge. Mm-hmm. And if that were the case, and it was me, Rodney, and Will, the chances are that I probably would have won.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I think the main thing you mentioned, the idol there, and I think that was the main thing that made you more of a strong contender throughout your season. And obviously this year, there's a completely different way that idols are being mixed up into the game. Was that something that you consider, like, I don't know how much thought you really put into this season, but that anybody was really considering that there would be this many shakeups with how the season was going to be handled, that idols would be, looking differently, like every idol's supposed to look differently out there, that idols aren't even going to be hidden in the same spots. Were there a lot of thoughts about how this season would try to confuse the players, or that they'd be trying to switch things up just to keep it fresh?
I think that in my mind, I would always think, like, I thought season 30, my season, would be a twisted season because it was the 15-year anniversary. So they wanted to make something big out of that. And certainly with as much publicity as we were given for the second chance build, that I honestly did think that it was like things would be shaken. You never know how, because they could come up with a million different things. So, I mean, I wouldn't honestly think through, well, they could do this, they could do that, they could do that, because you just really have no clue as to what they can do. Mm-hmm. But it's not shocking to me that they're putting in so many twists, because they have to with returning players to make it
challenging.
It's challenging, exciting, all of that,
Yeah. With again, from your perspective as somebody who held the idol, I think from our count, you had the longest idol in your possession in the history of the show. It was pretty much straight from episode 1 till the end. You probably had a lot of time to think about all the different ways that idols can be played and everything. And this year we've got 2 people who have found idols right away. We have Kelly Wentworth and Jeremy now. What's your opinion on how they're handling their idols so far? Or if you were out there, would you be doing anything differently? Or do you think that there's anything more that could be coming with them with those idols?
I mean, I think that it's good to just, find it, put it away, and keep it in your back pocket. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I mean, I think so far it looks like they've both done the right thing.
With Jeremy this week, the first thing he did was kind of misled Steven in a way. I mean, everybody knows that Steven's looking for idols, or I don't know. It's funny because Steven's kind of getting this one-dimensional edit so far that, he's the guy who's looking for idols. And it could very well be that he's just mentioned it once or twice, but that the other players are just trying to throw attention on him. But how do you find with Jeremy kind of misleading Steven about the idol? Is it more a move to draw attention away from himself and put it on to Steven, who seems like a likely person you could pin an idol on? Or do you think that he's maybe trying to make a real alliance with him now?
I think, it's hard to say what he's thinking, but I think he's just playing it cool and, wanting to make sure that, nobody knows what's happening on the other tribe, So, Jeremy now knows how the idol was found. Nobody else does. Mm-hmm. He doesn't know, if there's somebody else elsewhere that has that same concept. So, I think it's good to just kind of let it play out and see what happens. Mm-hmm. I think he's just trying to push the, keep everyone, still looking.
It's interesting with Jeremy because he seems to have a lot of loose ties to people so far in the game. I don't think we've seen him have any really solid alliances. You talked earlier in the season about, okay, he's got something going on with this person, something going on with this person. I think one of the most surprising things is he brought Keith in the beginning, and he said, I wouldn't normally work with Keith, but Keith can be just that extra ear listening around camp, and now he's got Steven in there. Do you think in a season like this, what Jeremy's doing, building these loose alliances, is probably more out of just caution, or I'm thinking it could even just be that we're not seeing enough from their camp at this point because they haven't lost yet?
Yeah, I don't think that we really know what's going on yet, because honestly, we've seen so little from them. We haven't even heard from half of the girls on that tribe that we really don't know what's going on yet. We've only seen Angor, or whatever their name is.
Yeah. Well, it's also interesting that you mentioned the girls, because the other side of that is you have Monica, who was absolutely silent for the first 3 episodes, and then out of nowhere she has this confessional this week, and she's talking, about potentially putting together a girls' alliance and everything. And the thing that I found more interesting with that was that maybe it is, again, just because we haven't seen anything on the tribe, but it doesn't seem like there are any of these interactions between the people. So when we're watching Bayon, it's almost frustrating because we don't know what's going on. We don't know, is she just trying to put together a loose alliance, or is there anything actually going on with these people?
Yeah, I know. It's like we honestly have seen so little from half the people on that tribe that it's going to come as a, kind of a shock to us to find out kind of what's going on. Mm-hmm. I mean, I think we're getting tidbits given to us, but not enough for us to really make any clear distinction between, like, who's close, who's not, who's working together. We really don't know what's going on yet.
Yeah, and it could make for a more fun second half of the season where everything's suddenly a surprise because we just didn't have that chance. That kind of is what happens on a lot of these 3 tribe seasons. Again, coincidentally, on all 3 tribe seasons, you have the one that just can never win. And obviously this time it's Angkor, like you said.
I know.
They just
Why?
break.
It is always one tribe that, goes through a bad time. It's never even.
With Angkor, what do you think it is with them? Like, because we've had the tribe shaken up a little bit. Obviously, there's a little bit, like, I found it to be a little bit suspicious that the 3rd tribe that was decided that lost that challenge, for whatever reason, had to go back to camp, and you have to start from scratch, and you have nothing else, and that can't help them. But do you think there's anything else to Angkor's losing streak, like why they just can't put it together?
I mean, I think that they're not 100% operating as a team. There's still so much twisting that's going on in that tribe that it definitely hurts in gameplay. Even though you try and go there and put forth, 150%. But, honestly, I think it is the food issue. I mean, they literally have nothing. Mm-hmm. I don't understand how that's even possible.
Yeah.
Because at least the other 2 tribes have something from when they got food from day one. Mm-hmm. Or we know at least one tribe has rice. We honestly don't even know what the other tribe is eating because we don't know how much food they have left over.
Yeah. Yeah, and with Angkor, I mean, they've even said that their camp, and again, it may have just been Varner saying, "Oh, well, this is just maybe down on the luck or whatever." But he was saying like there's nothing even there for them, so it's even like a bad location. Like it's like they lost one challenge, and they're like, "This tribe's already the loser tribe. Let's just dump on them some more."
Well, I mean, there's not like when I was out there, we didn't have anything on our beach. Like there were no banana trees or, there was nothing. If we didn't have a bag of rice, we didn't really, that's not true. We did have fish potential, I guess, but not on White Collar because when we were on White Collar, we had the worst beach and, we had all those rocks and you couldn't really catch fish because the water was rocks. You couldn't even walk in it. Yeah, so I don't know how I don't know where they're getting their energy to even exist, let alone compete in those hard, tough challenges. I mean, look at them. They could barely move.
And, I mean, a big deal was made about how strong Takeo is. They have Joe and everything. With Angkor, I mean, I think they're kind of getting this reputation like, well, this is the weak tribe, but you look at Savage and you look at Tasha, I mean, these are real big challenge performers. They should have some strength in there.
Absolutely. Honestly, when Savage won that challenge, I was like, good for you. Mm-hmm. You are a badass because in my mind, I thought they don't have a shot in hell at winning that. And I'll tell you what, Savage came through in the clutch, and he pulled off that win, and at least they got one meal, and it made my heart happy because I was, like, hungry for them.
And nobody, I mean, regardless what anybody thinks about Savage as a player, nobody deserves it more than Savage because he was like on one of the original loser tribes that never won. I mean, all the way back in Pearl Islands, he's just had terrible 2 games as far as luck goes in challenges.
Right, exactly. But honestly, before the mix-up, he was on a good tribe.
Mm-hmm.
And then, he got, kind of put in the penalty box with that tribe and no supplies.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think it's okay if you have to rebuild your shelter and start from scratch and, okay, that's fine, build a new home. But I don't know, having no food is a twist that really takes it to another level.
As far as twists go,
they're one step away from naked and afraid.
Yeah, pretty much. If Richard Hatch was out there, they'd already be there.
See? Richard, Max, come on.
Another thing about the Shirin, yeah. Another thing about the twist with this week was having the reward challenge with only one person participating. Did you like that as just a change of pace? Do you think that's something that could continue in future episodes?
Well, it wasn't honestly the only time that has ever happened because in Blood versus Water, remember, the pairs had to compete against each other.
Mm-hmm.
And they were the only ones competing in that challenge.
Yeah.
So it's kind of the similar concept to that. But I did think, wow, that's... I'll tell you who I was really pleased at was Joe for letting Terry Dietz do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And Terry, of course, that's his reputation, is that he's one of the greatest challenge performers of all time. And I think even just as a fan of a show, that's what I think everybody was thankful for, because the fans all want to know, like, can this guy 10, 12 years later, however long it's been, still perform like he did in Panama? And of course, he didn't win, but he was really strong this week.
Exactly. I mean, he showed that he still has it at, I think, what is he, 55?
Yeah, he's up there.
There he is. Terry Dietz still bringing it home.
It was nice even just for him at the age he was in Panama, but especially now just to see he still got it. Because you get these, I mean, everybody remembers Colby, Heroes vs. Villains, and James pegging him Superman in the fat suit. So
right.
Terry can do it at his age. Colby has no excuse.
Exactly. And I mean, Joe's a challenge beast anyway. So, I mean, he doesn't really have to prove anything. He's like the Island MacGyver. Come on.
Yeah. With Angkor, I think the other thing that may be really dragging them down is Abby Maria. And the interesting thing about her is that she's clearly, the least physically competitive person out there. She's probably also the worst for morale from what we can tell. But at the same time, every single vote is coming down to her. Why do you think that is?
Listen, whatever she's doing, she's got people on her side. The first 2 weeks, her name was on the chopping block both times.
Mm-hmm.
The third week, I don't think she wasn't on. I don't even remember. Oh yes, it was PG or Abby.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, actually, when it was Shireen, she wasn't on the chopping block that week, but she was until she kind of switched everybody up. But whatever she is doing, she gets people on her side. So, some people have, one way of getting it done, and she has her own way of getting it done. Listen, it worked for her the first time she was on the show. She made it deep in the game. And after 4 weeks of people thinking she's going to go every week and she's still there, more power to her.
I think also the great thing with these players like Varner and Tasha is they're not really even necessarily giving up what their use is for Abby. And the real question at this point, I would think, is Abby being taken along more as they figure she's a great goat to take to the end? Or is it just when the numbers are this close, you have a small tribe and you need that extra person, having that person who's kind of emotionally led, if you can be on the side of that person, that it works? Or maybe do you think it's a little bit of both?
I think it could be both. You just don't know where their head's at because you don't know how many conversations they're really having. We get the one-liners and the snippet of information that we see, and, we really don't know the depth of all the conversations that took place.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like with Varner, he wasn't sleeping the week before, when he could have been probably going home based on, you know, when Tasha called him a rat.
Yeah.
He was campaigning, but we just didn't see it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Varner's an interesting one, and we definitely have to get a lot of opinions on him.
Oh my God, I love Varner. I don't know what we're going to do without Varner now.
I know, and in a way, it almost makes me more interested in the rest of the season that he could go this early, because he was the star, and I don't think I've talked to one person who hasn't been like, Varner is owning this season. You know, even if you weren't a fan of Varner before, you have to be now. And I'm a Varner fan from all the way back in Australia. I mean, I was so disappointed when he was voted out. But this is totally different. I mean, he played probably harder, and we saw more of him in 4 episodes than we did the entire season in Australia. And the fact that he's gone is almost a bit of a shakeup. You know, a lot of people talked about in San Juan del Sur that you had Jeremy and Josh, these 2 characters that were built as the major characters of the season, that they could go that early. It really surprised the audience and made them think what else could happen. Were you surprised that Varner's gone? Do you think this is kind of a bit of an editing trick, let's fool the audience, or is it just the guy's such television gold they couldn't bear to not put everything he said on TV?
Well, I mean, he was television gold. I can't remember, like, all the seasons, you know, when I just don't remember 15 years ago. My memory's not that good anymore. Or, you know, like, I don't remember Varner's first season. And I didn't really have the opportunity to go back and look at everybody's season, you know, because it was way too complicated, way too long. I just couldn't do it. So, honestly, I don't even remember his first game. So when I saw him on TV this time, it was like I was seeing him for the first time. And I absolutely loved him. Loved him. He was controlling the tribe from day one, but in a nice, sweet, comfortable way.
Yeah, absolutely.
And he was hilarious. He was TV gold. There's no question about it. They found it, they aired it, they did the right thing. He was fabulous. And yeah, now we're going to have to see who picks up that TV gold slot, because we're all going to be looking for the next Varner, because who's going to take that role?
Another thing we talked about, and you can kind of give your opinion on this based on, let's say, the first 3 episodes, is whether or not you have an all-star season and somebody has a poorer showing than the first time. If they really ever have a shot to come back. You know, if you're looking at, let's say, the first 3, Vetus, Shireen, and PG, do you think that there's a chance for them to come back, considering that their games really just didn't stand out this time and they went so early?
You never really know what they're looking for. So I think it's all about, you know, how their season and their concept is going to be formed. Because I know from my own experience that I tried out for 4 years, and I got a call back every year. So I knew that they found something about me that they liked, but they just couldn't put it into the season yet. You know what I mean? So I think that, you know, people have potential. People have played 4 times. People have played 3 times. So it all depends on the concept for the season and the personality that they're looking for to round out the season. So I would say that, you know, is it possible that anybody could play again? Yeah. People have played 3 times. People have played 4 times. So it's what they're looking for, I guess.
Varner has to be, even if there is some rule where you don't bring, for the longest time, they never brought anybody back who didn't at least make the merge. Varner's best game was finishing in 10th place pre-jury, and yet I think at this point it's pretty much a lock. He's coming back if they have another all-star season. I mean, there's no way they can't bring him back after what he did this past season.
Yeah, I mean, again, he played a great game. He was entertaining. He was fabulous to watch. So, yeah, I would not be surprised if he got another shot.
I think one player that...
But I better get a shot first. Just...
Well, imagine you on a season with Varner. Like, is he the type of guy that you'd want to team up with?
Oh my God, I love him. I love him, Varner.
That's the dream alliance for Second Chances 2.
Oh my God. Could you imagine the Varner Mama C? Wow. We could make it happen. CPS, make it happen.
The interesting thing about this season is that it really was, I was labeled Second Chances. A lot of people have kind of, at least on air, been playing up on that they want to change their game a little bit. You know, Spencer's kind of fell into the same trap as the first time. He's like, I want to change. With Cass, I think she's the only one that is like fully embraced this, where it's a completely different character. What's your take on Cass from the first season to this one we're seeing now? Because this week, I mean, we've had a couple of mentions in the past episodes about, oh, I'm kind of liking this tribe. Then all of a sudden, nowhere, we have her like making a friendship necklace and just being like this sweet motherly character. Like, if this was the first time seeing Cass, we'd think it was like the second coming of Tina Weston or something. This is not the character we expected. Do you think it was just like she's been saying that maybe she gets along with these people better, or is this maybe like a conscious effort? What do you think's going on with Cass?
I think she read the book, How to Make Friends and Influence People, and that she's taking things to heart. I mean, you know, when she sold herself on this season, she's like, yeah, I'm bringing it. I'm Chaos Cass. I got that name for a reason. Mm-hmm. But, you know, she didn't win. So if she's thinking about what she needs to do differently and she's thinking that would help, maybe it'll help. I don't know. We'll see. I mean, we haven't seen a lot of her. What we've seen so far is not what we've expected. So I think that she is absolutely, you know, making adjustments where she thinks that it hurt her in the past.
The real question, I think, is going to be, again, like they're telling stories with a lot of these characters. You know, Steven has this story, well, he's looking for the idol. And if something comes up more than one episode in a row, you know that it's probably going to lead somewhere. You know, Spencer, he's trying to be, you know, friendly with people and change his game from last time. Cass is like, every time she is on screen, it is saying the same thing, like she's trying to change her image. The real question is, when they do eventually lose, or even if they don't lose and it goes to individual game, can Cass survive a single vote just based on her past reputation? Do you think she has a chance, even considering how she's changed everything this time?
You know, it's all about the emotions of the people. You have no idea what people are thinking in their head. You know, I think it was it Kelly who said something about Joe? Yeah, Joe's fabulous. He's making hammocks. He's cooking here. He's cooking there. I would never take him to the end.
Yeah, exactly.
So, I mean, you have no idea what these people are thinking, you know. So it's just hard to say right now because we haven't seen a lot of, you know, true alliances from any other tribe that really hasn't gone to tribal council.
Well, let's cover Joe for a second as you brought him up, because this is somebody you've played with. This is somebody that you've gone head-to-head with. And there was even another quote. It was Jeremy, I think, even in the first episode, that said a similar thing where he's like, I want to get Joe on my side because as long as he's here, that's like a target off of me. I think he called him a shield. He's like, he's a great shield. This is almost seems like this is what Joe's position in the game is. Like, everybody's going to love him being out there, but maybe he is a target. Do you see Joe having any chance of making the merge at this point as we get closer?
Listen, I'm Team Joe. He's got to win. He's got to win this. Joe's got to bring it home, baby.
Yeah.
Listen, Joe is fabulous. He's sweet. He's adorable. Everyone likes him, and he's like the best person to have on your tribe. So the fact is, his team is probably not going to lose.
Yeah.
What
do you think happens, though, when they get to the individual games? Do you think that it's like Worlds Apart, where it's like every week we have to get rid of Joe,
Well, the thing is, you've got a lot of competitors out there. He's not the only one. Mm-hmm. I mean, he's the youngest competitor, but Spencer's not a bad competitor. Jeremy's not a bad competitor. Terry, we know, is a beast. You know, so there's more than Joe for everybody to worry about. So, you know, it just depends on, you know, who's going to bring it and what type of challenge it is. You know, I think, honestly, that Joe's not the only one that people have to worry about. So he's not, on our season, I honestly believe he was the standout.
Mm-hmm.
If Joe was there, Mike would have a hard time winning. Mike won everything else because Joe was gone. I don't know. We didn't really see a lot of competition with Joe and Mike in it together. So I don't know what would have happened then. We also didn't see Joaquin. Joaquin is a great competitor too. If you had a Joe, Mike, Joaquin challenge, I don't know where it would come out. No, we didn't get to see a lot of Joaquin, but he was a challenge beast. I can tell you that. So, it's all about, there's luck involved in this as well, because you might just get your name on the chopping block for no apparent reason, and then you're gone, and then you don't get to show your stuff, and that's what happened to Joaquin. So, I don't think it's only Joe that people have to worry about. I think there's, there's probably 4, and Savage, there's 4 or 5 top guys, alpha males that are going to be, pretty powerful in challenges.
Yeah, even not to mention Tasha. I mean, she won, what was it, like 2 or 3 individual immunities in her season?
Woo.
Yeah, there are a lot of strong people.
Right, you've got Woo. I forgot about Woo. You've got Woo. You've got Tasha. Yeah, you've got some competitors out there that are going to really bring it. So I think there's a lot of, a lot to distribute.
It's interesting because you said earlier about how Joe kind of let Terry take center stage during that individual tribal reward challenge. It would almost be in his best interest. Again, when you look at his tribe, you've got a guy like Terry on there. Not even to mention Keith. I mean, Keith, for a 54-year-old man who looks like a stick, he won how many challenges in his season? I mean, there are competitors there. Do you think it's in Joe's best interest going forward to continue to do that, to try not to take the spotlight too much in challenges, be the guy around camp, like you said, that's making life pleasant for everybody, that is the island MacGyver, and then in the challenges, take a bit of a backseat because there's some other guys out there who could take a little bit of attention off of him?
Yeah, and then bring it when you have to, like he did with him and Cass, took the puzzle challenge and, brought it home quickly. So, yeah, I think he's got to play it that way because, I mean, he's fresh in everyone's mind. He's coming off right out of, his season back to back. So he's going to have a target. That's why initially when I thought about, oh my God, I was so devastated by not getting on second chances, I thought to myself, you know what, it might not be that bad a thing not to be on second chances because you're fresh in everyone's mind. Give it a little time, let people forget, and then go back. So he's got that as a disadvantage clearly because he's like so likable, and B, he's a challenge beast, and C, he's like the provider for everything. He cooks, he builds hammocks, he builds shelters, he can do anything.
Well, the back-to-back game is another interesting thing because, again, in the history of Survivor, people who've done back-to-back games generally don't improve on their position, and they almost never do anything different from one game to the next. We saw Rupert, Russell Hantz, obviously Amanda's one of the most famous ones, 2 back-to-back tribal councils, made the same mistake each time, even Malcolm to a certain extent. Do you think that it's a disadvantage? We've had a lot of people talk about this before who have played those back-to-back games, but do you think it is a disadvantage when you go into these back-to-back seasons that maybe you don't have that full perspective or the time, especially on a season like this where you guys would have been finishing finale and right on a bus out there? Is that enough time, or do you think you, like you said in your case, it's not a bad idea to not be on here, that you'd be served better by having 6 months, a year in between?
Yeah, the only benefit to Joe was that he was out, pretty early in the jury, that he did have time to kind of rejuvenate himself. What he didn't have is, he saw his whole game play out before second chances started. So he had that opportunity. So that's a teeny tiny little benefit, but I think back-to-back seasons, whoever they play always has a disadvantage because, is your body ready? Is your mind ready? Have you been able to, kind of step back and think about what worked, what didn't work, what do you need to change in order to, get a better game? So those are the things that, maybe he didn't really have a lot of time to go through, whereas maybe Varner had, 14 years to get it right. And so I think that's the disadvantage that Joe has.
Just jumping back a couple of weeks for a second, because Joe's not the only player on the season that you had a chance to play with. Shireen's another interesting one. Dan Foley did the recap. I think it was in episode 1 or 2. It might have even been episode 2 when Shireen left. And I don't know if it was his quote, but I think he was actually quoting somebody else from your season who said that Shireen's the type of player who will go out there and play, 5-6 games in a row and play the same game 5 or 6 times in a row. Is that your take on her? Or do you think that maybe she had something else up her sleeve and just didn't have the time to change anything this time?
Well, I mean, it's hard to say. What we saw was a very similar game. She aligned herself with Spencer, so that was her max. They were strategizing and strategizing. You can see them talking. They were always together, and they kind of set themselves apart a little bit from the rest of the team. And because people knew that they knew the game inside and out, they could recite players from every season. They would remember every single challenge that ever existed, who won that challenge in, the year 2000. I mean, they just have that capability of remembering every single detail, and I think people saw that as a threat.
With Jeff, I remember him. I thought it was intentional. There was the scene where her and Spencer were going back and forth saying, oh, and then this could happen. And Jeff was like, wow, you guys are going a mile a minute. And he was playing like he was the dumb one there. And I think it was kind of intentional on his part, to almost calling attention to that. That probably didn't help their case either. They had these players out there that knew how she played the first time. And all you really got to do is just drop that one thing, I would figure. That's got to be something that hurts a lot of the players out there, is that you're familiar with all the players. And if you can just plant one seed in somebody's head about, well, this is how it went last time, you got to be cautious, then, you could screw that player over royally.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, he was making it seem like they were light years ahead of him, but meanwhile, I think he had the game pretty well wrapped up in his head.
Oh yeah, I think from episode 1 he was playing even the audience about that whole I'm old school and I'm behind and this is too fast for me. I think he knew exactly what he was doing the whole time.
Yeah, exactly.
With this episode, they lost the immunity challenge again, and it really came down to him and Wu. And it's amazing how, like you said, something can change just like that. Varner was like completely on top. There was no question about it. And last week we saw this huge shift where Tasha and Savage went directly from the bottom to the top, just like one moment, and Varner went straight from the top to the bottom. And it really just became a battle between him and Wu this week. Wu's another one of those guys where it's interesting because I can't quite figure out why Wu is struggling so much in this game. Because, like, you saw Wu's first season, of course, right?
Hmm?
You've seen Wu's first time he played, right?
Yes, absolutely.
And the thing is that the biggest problem I found that he had was that he kind of had the reputation of being wishy-washy. He wouldn't really make a decision. Every scene I've seen him in this year, he's been very firm in his opinions. He stood up for himself. He stood up for himself, at the beginning of the season. He stood up for himself with even Varner, where Varner was called out as the rat or whatever. And it's just, no matter what happens, nobody seems to even be looking at this guy as a number. Why do you think that is?
Well, I don't know, because honestly, this week they didn't even need Abby Maria's vote, right? Because Tasha and Savage could, all they needed was Wu to get out. Or Varner, whoever they wanted to get out, they could get out.
Yeah.
But I think that he's not as tied to the rest of the tribe for some reason. I mean, I think this week, the lead up towards next week shows a lot more camaraderie. It appears that, they're getting along, they're laughing, they're together, whatever. Maybe that was the end of this episode or after they came back, but it looked like Wu was more engaged or starting to become that. So, I think he got a wake-up call that basically said, wow, I almost went home. Like, I gotta do something.
Yeah, and the thing is Tasha really was deciding this week, and we've seen every week, we've talked about it earlier, how Abby Maria is the one who's controlling the votes, but this week Tasha was able to kind of convince her on something, and they ended up voting Varner out over Wu. I doubt, you've been to tribal councils, and I would assume that there probably aren't a lot of decisions that are made on the spot. So do you think this is, they went into this tribal council and they knew exactly what they're doing, or do you think Wu and Varner's arguments or pitches back and forth may have helped in any way?
I think that it solidified their decision. I think Tasha wanted Wu to stay and Varner to go. She didn't trust Varner for some reason. She felt like, maybe he had too many friends on the other side, and so that was it. She basically made up her mind, and Andrew was going with her, so it didn't matter. They only needed one. Well, certainly Wu's not going to vote for himself, so I don't think it was as close or as, as up to Abby as we were led to believe. Because her vote really didn't matter.
Yeah, they really didn't need her. I think the only reason that they kind of are bringing her along is just, if they were to burn her this week somehow, what if she were to team up with the guy who's left, and then you have this tie going in there. But the thing that I'm finding most interesting with Tasha and Savage's game is it was thrown out there as soon as they formed this new tribe that the possibility of her using her old tribe as leverage, whereas normally you get these people and they merge and like, I'm 100% with this new tribe, even if they're a minority. She went in there and it wasn't really like a flex your muscles move. It was almost like a very logical thing where she's like, look at how many people from my old tribe are still in the game. If you go with me, then you're on with the highest numbers. Do you see that as something that could happen? Like, if once they do get to the merge, do you think that old tribal loyalties would still be that strong, considering they only played together for a few days? Everything that happened on your season, there were big shakeups, and obviously the blue collar had a much tighter bond, but we haven't seen enough. But do you think that there might be something to Tasha's strategy there, where she seems to obviously be playing for, I'm going to reunite my own tribe? Could that ever happen?
Again, it's all about how strong and the likability factor of how people are getting along, right? Because if you feel like you can trust them, you feel like, they have your back, then maybe yes. But again, they didn't play together that long. There wasn't such loyalty built, and it depends how long they're going to play with this tribe.
And even, you have to also consider, I guess, the longer that, Bayon and Takeo are on these winning streaks, the longer it is before they go to tribal council. That could work one of two ways. You could have it where they're just dying to get rid of somebody, or where they've had enough time where they're all of a sudden this solid tribe.
Right, exactly. So you just never know how it's going to play out. It depends how long they're going to last as this 3-tribe format. Honestly, I think they're going to throw in another twist.
Do you think there could be an early merge? Because they almost seem to be teasing that during tribal council this week, didn't they? Where they're like, well, we don't know when there's a merge, or we don't know, it could be tomorrow. I almost thought they might have been teasing it. Do you think that's a possibility?
They could do anything. I was thinking that, they're in 16 now, right? Because 4 people are gone.
Yeah.
So they could do I don't think they're going to do a tribe swap next week. 8-8, but they could do a 7-7 tribe swap.
Mm-hmm. You put it back to 2 tribes, you mean?
Get back down to 2 tribes. They could leave it like this, go straight into a merge, an early merge, which would be crazy because there'd be so many people. So I don't know. They never really do a merge, because the merge is like one step in the game where that's like the first thing you want to do is you want to make the merge.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know that they would just randomly allow it to be so many people because it's such a big accomplishment to make the merge.
All right. And I guess the jury portion, you want the jury portion to very quickly follow that too.
Yeah, exactly. Because then it's like you make the merge, but then you don't make the jury, and then people are very bitter when you make the merge and don't make the jury.
Well, as we see with Varner, 14 years trying to get back on the show, one tribal council away from making the jury.
Yeah, exactly. Like Kelly didn't make the jury, and she made the merge. Corinne didn't make the jury, she made the merge. And people are, I think, wasn't it Corinne the first season where that happened, where if you made the merge, it didn't necessarily mean you make the jury? And I think she was the first season that happened to.
Yeah, that was Caramoan, I think.
Yeah, and she was really pissed, and I wouldn't blame her.
And then she didn't even get to sit on stage in her finale, which is another issue.
Yeah, that's like a double smack.
Well, we know so far that you're a fan of Varner. Outside of Varner, are there any other players that you're really rooting for this year? I mean, Joe, I guess, would be a given at this point. But anybody else that you're really on the board?
I love Team Joe. I love Kelly Wentworth. I love Jeremy, Keith, Tasha, Spencer. I mean, honestly, there's no one that I dislike, but I just haven't seen a lot of Monica yet. We haven't seen a lot of Kelly Wigglesworth yet. We haven't seen a lot of Kimmy, Cass. So there's a lot of people that their story hasn't been told yet. So I'm just waiting to see that. I think it's a great cast. I don't think there's anyone where I'm like, oh, if I could just get rid of them. Everyone is playing the game and they're doing a great job. So I'm just really enjoying the season. It's turning out to be a really fun season.
I'm kind of curious if you had not been on this season. Like, let's pretend we've seen none of these 4 episodes yet. You weren't on Worlds Apart and you knew they were doing this vote. What type of players would you have been voting for? I guess, especially including the ones that aren't on this season. Who would you have voted for going into Cambodia?
I probably would have done a couple of, people who have been trying to get on for a long time. And then, it's hard because you always remember, like, the recents. Mm-hmm. So, I knew all the recent players inside and out. I didn't know a lot of the older players. I didn't remember their games, per se. Mm-hmm. So, but I probably would have done random votes for old schoolers just because, I would feel like, oh my God, they've been trying, or they're so excited, I want to give them a shot. Like, Terry. Everyone knows him because he was a challenge beast, and you remember those things. He's, in the elite class of players, like Mike, joined that team of elite. So I would probably have done a random pick of both old school and new school.
I'm thinking that's probably what might have even happened, because a lot of people were surprised when the cast was announced and we saw so many of those old school players make it, because they have been off TV for a long time. A lot of these people, they kind of just started social media accounts just to get on the show. And really, if you look at it, of the pre-Heroes versus Villains players, the first 20 seasons, the only ones that didn't make it on were T-Bird and Shane Powers. And everybody else from those old school seasons are on there, and it has made for an interesting season just to be able to see these players that you haven't seen in a long time.
Yeah. And then you have, 4 players from Brains,
Brawn, and Beauty.
Brawn and Beauty, yeah.
Yeah, again, a recent season, probably one of the more popular recent seasons. But thankfully, they ended up with a nice balanced cast. It would have been better if it had you on there. And the main ones, I'll tell you right off the bat, the main ones that I voted for, a lot of the ones I voted for didn't make it on there. Stephanie Valencia, Troy Zan, you, and T-Bird. I think those four were like every single time I was voting and it didn't happen. But it's one of those seasons where I don't think anybody was ever going to get every player they wanted. But just to have any of these players back is worth it to have a season like this.
Exactly.
We have a couple of listener questions before we get to our final sets of questions. We'll get some of your predictions on how you think this season is going to play out. Before we get to that, first question we have, and I don't even want to try to pronounce this entire name because I'm going to butcher it and somebody's getting insulted and then never listen to our show again. Their question is, Dofil, I believe, is how I'm pronouncing this properly. If I'm not, then just leave us a voicemail and tell us how to pronounce it. They want to know if any of the castaways from this season had approached you pre-season about any type of pre-game alliances.
Honestly, I didn't get a lot of pre-game alliance requests. I think it was just I wasn't reaching out, and so, people are kind of nervous to reach out. I was still on the season. Maybe they thought I was going to win, so I didn't do a lot of pre-game alliance.
Were there any rules in place? Like, we know from previous All-Star seasons that they kind of have an unwritten rule where they discourage it. Like, if we find out you're doing this, then we won't put you on the show. Was anything like that laid out to you before the votes were revealed?
I mean, you're never supposed to talk to any contestants ahead of the game. So, I think I still had the fear factor of that in my head. I'm like, I'm not going to ruin my chances.
Yeah, I can't remember what player it was. There was a player from, I think, one of the more recent seasons who actually told us that they took that so seriously they were afraid they weren't even going to get cast on the season. They didn't. And then they got in the game and found out all these other people did, and they just felt like they were completely at a loss.
Right.
Second question we have here is from, I'm going to butcher this name too, Aiden Abelida. Leave us a voicemail if we get that wrong. They asked, did you know that the clothes you'd be wearing at the reunion would have been the clothes you'd wear if you got on Second Chances? I guess kind of an indirect way of wondering if you knew that, hey, we're shipping you right out the door onto a bus right away.
Well, I think that was, that we knew that we were going to go straight from there.
So you were pretty much prepared when you were sitting that finale. It's like, if I don't win $1 million, I could be walking out the door 5 minutes later and then playing the game all over again.
Yeah, I mean, I was at a little bit of a disadvantage because I wanted to look cute at my finale, so I wore what I wanted to wear. And so I was like, damn, if I go on Survivor, this is not going to be fabulous.
Well, Varner ended up on there in a suit, I think, and Savage, obviously. Well, Savage dressed like that even as an original season. Right, exactly. I would wanted to wear pants, but I didn't want to wear pants for my finale, and it was my finale, so I felt like, you know what, I'm gonna look the way I want to look and hope for the best. So plus, I'm assuming that as enticing as it might be to play the game a second time, you were probably hoping that you were winning the $1 million that night, and not going on Second Chances. Yeah, that would have been my first choice. I'm betting Mike's not kicking himself right now. It's like, I couldn't play a second time. Too bad. Yeah, I think that, honestly, if I were Mike, I would never want to play again because you could probably only go downhill. Mm-hmm. He had a great season. He won 5 immunity challenges. He's in an elite group, and he won the game. Oh, yeah. It can only go down from there. Like, win on the top, take your $1 million, and call yourself a winner, and, and go down in the history books as one of the greatest Survivor players of all time. Yeah, I hadn't thought about that, but, of course, nobody wants to be the next Colby, but there's probably never going to be another Sandra that wins 2 back-to-back games, but Sandra, in a way, had it easier because she didn't have this reputation of, winning all these challenges. I mean, she barely participated in most of her challenges. So she wins the game twice, but let's say Mike goes out there and he wins the second time. Well, are people going to be looking at him and saying, well, you didn't do anything with the challenges this time?
Exactly. You know, I mean, it's hard to win 5 immunity challenges.
Mm-hmm.
Only 5 people in the history of Survivor have ever done it. So the chances of that happening again are probably slim.
Yeah.
So it's like, you know, he's already an elite. He's in the elite club. He's a VIP Survivor. You know, like, leave it and keep your title.
Well, our final, I'm not going to call it question, but comment comes from Zachary Chong, and he just says, it's a shame you're not on this season. So that puts you in elite club too. I agree with Zachary Chong. You're not on the season, and it's a shame.
Thank you. That is very sweet of both of you. Thank you. So I expect that all your listeners will vote for Mama C if the time comes and I need my votes. Because remember, last time I wasn't allowed to campaign. So
yeah, that's right.
I couldn't do podcasts. I couldn't do videos. You know, and honestly, whoever saw my video knew that that was like the worst video ever because I wasn't allowed to say anything. So yeah, it was like the dumbest video. But anyway, it is what it is. It wasn't meant to be.
Well, we saw how quickly they brought back blood versus water, and if the rumors are true, we'll see how quickly they bring back brains versus bronze versus beauty. At this rate, a successful twist on a season is probably only about 2 or 3 seasons away. So you've got a little bit of time to prepare. You'll be out there soon.
Exactly. Thank you.
We have a final set of questions here. Basically just seeing predictions of how everything goes for the rest of the season. We'll see how good you are at guessing this if you come back on for recap next season. The first question is, based on the first 4 episodes you've seen, who's your tip to win the season?
Well, I want Joe to win. I think that, you know, I think Jeremy's a good player. I think Keith is a good player. Kelly Wentworth. My pick to win, I'm going to stick with Joe.
Joe? Okay. I figured he'd probably be loyal. I was assuming he'd come up in at least one of the first 2 questions here.
Yep.
Second question is a little bit different. Who's your dark horse? Maybe somebody who's not looking like they have as good of a shot right now, but you think they could pull it out in the end.
I mean, honestly, we haven't seen Wigglesworth or Kimmy, so I'm still waiting to see their game. I'm still waiting to see how they, you know, compete. So I think those 2 could be a dark horse.
It's something that would definitely, I mean, if you're looking at all 31 seasons, it's kind of a surprise somebody who hasn't really been in a lot. But you look at some of the more recent seasons, I mean, Blood versus Water 2, Natalie won, and we barely heard from her for the first half of the season. So it's not that far off.
Exactly, yeah.
I think we had similar prediction last week where Billy Garcia was on. He picked Monica. And of course, we only heard Monica speak for the first time this week, so he was basing it on nothing. So yeah, a lot of people seem to be leaning that way this season, that the quieter players are probably the ones that go further, which we saw what happened to Varner. You're probably dead on right
there. That's right.
Next question, who do you think is going to be the next one to go?
Ooh, You know, I mean, if that tribe loses again, I think it's going to be Wu or Abby, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, one of them are going to go.
Yeah.
So, but I think for some reason that Tasha and Savage are closer with Abby, so I think it might be Wu.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he doesn't look like he has the strongest game right now, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Next question is an interesting one. I'm interested to hear how you answer this. Who from your season, this wouldn't include yourself, but we've already put the pitch out for you, from your season that hasn't had the chance, so this excludes obviously the ones that are on the season, Joe and Shireen. Who would you like to see from your season have a second chance on Survivor?
Wow. You know, I think it would be fun to see 3 people. One would be and I'm basing this only on the fact that I don't think we saw enough of them. So it would be Max, Joaquin, and Kelly.
Yeah, those are definitely good choices.
I think they had some more gameplay, and they went out early. So those would be my pick.
I'm really surprised with Kelly that we didn't see more of her, because she seemed like the type of character that would just like dominate screen time. Was there more from her that we didn't see on the season that you got to see out there?
Kelly is fabulous. I love Kelly. She is just, I mean, she was always around. She was always in the mix. She was always out there. Great person to talk to. So, yeah, I think maybe her confessionals were more quiet.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that because we had so many strong personalities on our season that dominated the airtime, that it doesn't take a lot. I think we're seeing that on this season.
Right.
You've got the dominant personalities, the over-the-top, out there, not afraid to say anything personalities that are going to get the airtime, and, you know, Monica, who might be a little bit more reserved and quiet, you know, is not, Kelly Wentworth is not getting a lot, Kelly Wigglesworth, Kimmy, you know, they're not the flamboyant, out there, crazy people, so, you know, you're not going to get as much airtime.
Mm-hmm. It is fun when you can get these characters that come back and surprise you the second time, though. You know, and that's what will be interesting with Monica, is if we really do see a lot of her, because she was unfortunately playing on a season with Russell Hantz the first time around. So you're going to struggle for screen time even if you're a guy like Jeff Varner. So yeah, I'd love to see.
Exactly.
I'd love to see some of those people really come out. Final question, it'll be an interesting one. Which player on the season are you most similar to?
Oh wow, I don't know. I don't think I've seen anybody that I'm similar to yet. I don't think I have an answer for that.
Nobody.
Well, who do you think I'm most similar to?
I gotta think of a positive answer here, because that's the tricky thing, is that there's negatives to almost every personality, isn't there? I mean, I would say if anybody, going just based on the gameplay, I would probably say Jeremy. Just playing a very cautious game in the beginning, we saw big moments from you finding the idol early on. Obviously, Jeremy had the idol, and then you kind of bided your time, and when you did kind of strike, you know, against Shireen and everything, it was very calculated. I kind of see Jeremy in the same way.
Yeah.
We'll put you down as nobody, though, and I'll put my answer down as Jeremy.
Yes, you put your answer down as Jeremy, but I like your answer.
Well, we'd love to have you back on at any point in the future for a recap in a future season, and then you'll have the opportunity to check up on this and see how good you did from one week to the next. If Joe's the next one to go, you probably won't be as thrilled to learn.
No, I won't. I won't.
But otherwise, thanks for doing the recap with us this week, and feel free to come on the show anytime.
Fabulous. Great. Thanks for having me. It's always fun. I love Survivor Oz, and you guys have been great to me, so thank you. And we're in for another fun ride.
Big thank you again to Carolyn Rivera from Worlds Apart and almost from Survivor Second Chances Cambodia for doing this recap this week. As I said at the beginning, it's really interesting not just to have somebody on right off of their season to see how they perceive things as a first-time former player viewer, but the fact that she was almost on this season and just getting some of those stories about how she was preparing for possibly being on Second Chances, and the fact that you could still view it as a fan, it was really good to hear. So we will again have another recap next week. I'm thinking it's with Ben, but again, it all depends on scheduling with the contestants and scheduling with Ben. So if you hear my voice next week, just continue to listen, because we will have somebody good on with me. It won't just be me talking. But we'll have an announcement in the next couple of days where you can get your questions out there like we had for Carolyn here. And you could always listen to our Oztopsy, which I'm still not sure. Originally it was announced that it would be a pre-recorded episode. I don't know if that's still the case this week, but if you are able to check up on our page and see if we're going to be airing it live this week. If not, the recorded web episode will be up just shortly after when it goes up. soon. And as always, continue to follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook, subscribe to us on iTunes, or whatever other feeds there are out there. And until next time and next episode, we will speak to you on the train.